you're ready to go.
All right, we'll call the March 15th, 2021 Library Board meeting to order. Looks like we have in attendance Annette Allen, Vicki Anderson, Judy Beatty, Laura Beckler, Sandy Pardelow, Barbara McLaughlin, Julie Ratliff, Ronald Smith, Cliff Henry, and no Ed Bergen yet. Did everyone receive a copy of the last two meetings minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve both sets of minutes?
So move.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Minutes
Sorry.
are approved.
Excuse me, seconded? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I thought I heard a second.
I seconded.
Yeah, okay, yeah, good. All right, and just in time, Ed rolls in for the financial report. Hey, Ed.
Look at that for timing. Hey, how you doing, everybody? Okay, the financial report, folks, for February 2021. Our beginning balance is $25,043.65. We had one deposit in the amount of $500, and we had one withdrawal payable to Comcast in the amount of $15.81, and that brings our ending balance to $25,527.84. Any questions on the report?
Looks like no. Thank you for that.
Okay, and I do have one other item I did want to mention, Britt and folks. In the January meeting, I believe that I had raised the issue, the possibility of possibly doing an automatic debit to our banking account for the payments of our monthly Comcast bill. And the reason for that was a couple of reasons. Basically, it was a turnaround time, and because we're getting our bills a little bit later, we had little turnaround time to pay our Comcast bill. So I just wanted to say, cut to the chase and say that I spoke with Xfinity, and I've been able to set up an automatic debit account to our checking account, and that monthly payment will be debited to our account at the first couple of days of the month. So
Awesome.
So that's been taken care of. We don't have to worry about post office turnaround time. Saves us a stamp. It makes it much easier. So that's been taken care of.
Much simpler. Good. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. That's my report.
All right. And Jessica, are you ready for value engineering? Thanks for joining us.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late.
Did everyone receive a copy of the email that had the, I think, 6 value engineering possibilities on it? And so Jessica is going to help us with an explanation of, oh, somebody's missing this? Okay.
I didn't get it.
I did.
Everyone got it, you and me. You and I.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't notice that. Okay, well, let's circulate that real quick then.
And I have that available to, I could share it on the screen if you'd like.
Awesome. Okay, that might be quicker.
Yeah, that'd be
better.
Perfect.
Well, Britt, how do you want to do this? Do you want me to just be available for questions, or do you want me to walk through these items?
Yeah, well, okay. So I'm sorry, I didn't realize everyone didn't see this email. So just to begin, these are the 6 items that Aaron with J&J zeroed in on, where there is a possibility that we could save some money by making decisions one way or the other. The first one, I think we have discussed a couple of times through the process of considering the bids, and it's to do just a brushed finish on the concrete rather than an aggregate finish. And the others are maybe a little more technical, or things that I don't readily understand what the options are and how that'll affect the look and the function. And so I'm hoping that Jessica can help with some of that and just explain what they are, maybe make recommendations about whether that's money worth saving or spending one way or the other?
Sure. Why don't I just kind of go through line by line, and you all just feel free to throw questions my way as we go, or stop me if we need to have discussion along the way. So number one is delete exposed aggregate finish on the patio. This was something that we built into the base bid documents as an alternate. Right now, the back patio of the library has what's called an exposed aggregate finish, and that's where you kind of see the pebbles within the concrete. So this 5,400 savings would be, instead of doing that where you see the pebbles in the concrete, to go to a more traditional sidewalk type finish for the patio. It still is fine from a slip resistance standpoint. It really is just an aesthetic difference. So number two is delete the steel bench and table at the patio. So on the patio area, we had built in two features. One was a bench and one was more of a table height that were L-shaped on either corner. And this is something that Aaron just identified as sort of an easy thing that is removable without impacting anything else. So it does impact your functions and how you use the patio on an immediate basis. But I will say that this is something that can also be done later down the road. It could be done as more of a furniture sort of a fixture there, instead of necessarily being built in as part of the construction. So you don't necessarily, not necessarily an all or nothing here. It's a nothing right now, but maybe something later would be the option there. So delete the, oh, yes, please, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Jessica. I can't see, is it listed? I can't see it on my screen. Are these itemized, how much we would save on each of these?
They are. So the first item that I mentioned, deleting the exposed aggregate finish and going to a standard concrete finish, it has a savings amount of $5,400. The deletion of the steel bench and table on the lower patio is a total deduct of $3,800.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so number three on Aaron's list is to change from a fluid applied air barrier and replace with a commercial Tyvek product. This is the largest cost savings potential at $8,300. And so the thing to know about this, our preference professionally is to go with the spray applied air barrier. And what this is, it's the typical house wrap that you would see on a standard residential construction. And it's doing a couple of things. It's really your primary weather barrier. So it's preventing water from getting into your walls from the outside. And it's also preventing air movement between the walls from the inside to the outside, which helps a lot with your energy efficiency. We tend to prefer a fluid applied because there's a little bit of a reduction in a human error because it is a sprayed on application. So you don't get joints, you don't get gaps as much as you tend to be susceptible to with a Tyvek or house wrap product. Now, what he's proposing here is to use a commercial Tyvek, which still has the same water resistance and air resistant properties as the fluid applied. And I think J&J would do a fine job installing this. I would not worry about that from that side of from this. So, Craig and I have reviewed this, and we think this is something that's worth considering that really does not impact your function and certainly not your aesthetics at all. And like I said, that's an $8,300 line item. So number four is to change the veneer on the casework, the built-in bookshelves that we have, to maple in lieu of birch. So again, we've run this by our interior designer as well. She's fine with this change. Maple is a great wood. It's a very common veneer. It has a nice grain. It paints well, it stains well, and as it ages, wood tends to change color. Maple tends to go to more of a honey, from a brown to a honey. So I think that's an attractive color change in this sense. So I would not, and you're not getting a lot of direct solar radiation there. So that's a deduct of $1,250. So number 5 is to delete the spray foam insulation and replace with batt insulation. And this is a deduct of $67.50. This is one that is a little bit more of a question mark in my mind, and I'd encourage us to have some good conversation about this one. So we have batt insulation called out for the walls because of the air movement properties, but we have spray foam insulation called out in the floor structure and in the roof structure. Spray foam, kind of in the same way as the fluid applied air barrier, it seals the gaps. It's a better insulator. In a lot of ways, you get a better insulation and a much thinner profile of material. So for batt insulation, you're going to be maybe a 2.5 to a 3.5 R per inch versus spray foam, you're going to be at a 6.6. And you don't need to necessarily know what those numbers mean, just to know that spray foam is about twice as insulating in its properties compared to batt. That doesn't necessarily mean that batt is a poor insulator. You just need a thicker amount of it. So it also, with batt insulation, you do get more air movement, which is, it's going to be less energy efficient because that air is going to travel from bottom to top through the insulation a little bit better than a spray foam. The real thing to think about here, and this is, if you all, depending on what your thoughts are today, this is something that we would want to do a little bit more evaluation on, because of the thickness, the additional thickness of insulation that would be required to meet minimum R values for code. There's a potential that it would kick us into the arena of having to deepen our roof structure. So right now we have 2x10s in the roof. And as a code minimum, you need 10 inches of batt insulation. So 2x10 isn't actually 10 inches, it's 9.5 inches. And then we're also putting can lights up in there, which decreases some of that thickness. So that's, getting into the weeds a little bit, but there's just, that one's a little bit more nuanced than some of the others. And this is, I think I had mentioned this to you all previously, just how we look or try to look at value engineering is there's the cost savings of the line item, but there are also sometimes these things have fingers in other arenas. So this is one that could have a finger in other arenas that we would just need to further vet a little bit if you wanted to accept this one. So again, not saying don't do it, just making sure you understand what's involved. Okay.
Are these changes in response to our accepting the higher bid? Is the town pushing us to make these cuts?
No, this is, all along the way, we have mentioned that there's a typical process that most construction projects go through at this phase, which is called value engineering, where we may work with the contractor and say, what are their ideas for cutting some cost out of the budget? And I know Karen had previously discussed, wanting to cut cost a bit to maybe be able to afford furniture within the budget and things of that nature. So we would have been doing the same process with the other contractor, probably. Karen, Sam, please feel free to jump in there.
Well, I'll let you finish and go through 6, and then I'll say.
Okay. So that number 5, that spray foam, I don't think I called out the amount. That was a deduction of $6,750 was the amount on that one. Okay, number 6 is the last one, and that is to revise the metal finish on the storefront to a dark bronze. We've currently called out a matte black for that, which we felt was more closely aligned to your existing storefront finish. What I would say on this one, this was a deduct of $1,750. I would just ask Aaron to get us some samples, and that way you can see, physically see what that finish would be and hold it up against the existing and see if you have any issues with that. And my guess is it's probably going to be satisfactory.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Do you want me to say something now? Okay. When I got an email from Craig, and he said he was, quote, I'm quoting him, comfortable with all of these items, all of these changes. As far as I'm concerned, the only one that I considered that we ought to do was the number 2, where we have the bench in the table, or it's really a bench and a counter on the patio. And I felt those were important because they would be installed and they couldn't be taken away. They couldn't be moved by anybody. They would just be fixtures that we would have. And I think they would be very useful. I realized we could add them later, or we could supplement them with something that's portable. But I thought they really were very pretty and enhanced the look of the porch. And I figured if we did just take just that number 2 away, we would end up saving $23,450, which would probably be a good amount of money to have for some furniture, or from some future or something that we haven't anticipated.
Okay. Jessica, this is Judy Beatty. I do have a question. Is there any relationship between the impacts of numbers 3 and number 5? Do they work together in any way, or?
That's a great question. No, they're independent. So those do not have to be selected in tandem.
Okay.
That number 5 seems penny wise and pound foolish to me, since it impacts utility bills forever. To save $6,700 and pay it month by month out the door.
Yeah, you certainly will get some energy benefit with the spray foam. Now I'll say, would it be significant with it being, 1,000 square foot room versus the remainder of the library's insulation remains unchanged? So I don't know how much, I can't tell you empirically how much difference it might make, but it certainly would be a more efficient system to keep with the spray foam.
And Jessica, just to that same line item, and I don't know the answer to this. Would that in any way affect how we do the sprinkler system? Would there need to be any extra sprinkling in the interstitial space, or?
No, we do not have any
I wasn't
requirement for sprinklering the interstitial space.
Okay.
That one.
I wasn't sure if going from one to the other might affect that. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. It doesn't. We should be fine. The thing that really is on my radar with this one, and it's something that we just need to get a little bit deeper into if you all want to elect to choose this item, which is, we're happy to do that, is would we need to increase the structural depth of the roof system from a 10-inch, 2x10s to a 2x12 to be able to handle the thickness that would be required by the energy code of the batt insulation. So the things like that, we can decide to save $6,700 on the spray foam, and we may end up costing ourselves, $7,000 on going to increase lumber size in the roof to be able to account for it. So that's just one of those things that we find on jobs and with BDE.
So
I have a question. I'm not a contractor. I don't know, but batt insulation, is that pink stuff that you see underneath your house?
So yes, so batt insulation is it's very typical in residential applications and in commercial applications, quite frankly. And it's like a fibrous insulation that usually has a craft paper on one side. It's pink or yellow, typically.
So my understanding, and correct me because again, I'm not a contractor. My understanding is that after a period of time, you have to replace that batt insulation.
Yes. So, plenty of homes and buildings have gone on for decades without that being done. Over time, and this is the case with the majority of insulations out there, but definitely for batt, over time, the insulation starts to lose some effectiveness, especially when moisture vapor that inevitably moves through the wall system over time causes a densification of the batt insulation that can cause it to kind of sink in the wall. It can deteriorate over time. So you do lose efficiency over time. And that's the case with spray foam. And a lot of times when you evaluate the specific thermal properties of insulation. You can look at there's the installed R value the day you put it in, and then there's a matured R value or an R value of 10 or 15 years.
So are you saying that you also with time have to replace spray foam insulation?
No, not necessarily. I'm just saying, over time you lose a little bit of efficiency. Batt insulation tends to sink or physically deteriorate.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. What?
Oh, sure. Sorry. I said batt insulation tends to physically shrink or settle in a wall cavity, which you don't typically get with spray foam.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Oh, I have another question about number 1.
Yes, ma'am.
The exposed aggregate. Now, haven't been in the patio, so I don't know. Is it flat? Is it on a slope? Is there what I'm getting at is slipping. Is there a slope on the patio?
The patio is sloped to drain only very minimally, the same way that a sidewalk or any level surface is never actually level.
Okay.
That's actually going to be more of a slip hazard than anything. It'll have a typical finish that you'd find on a sidewalk. It will not be slick.
Okay.
It would be, you'd have it's called a slip coefficient, but it would.
So you don't need to worry about people slipping and falling.
No, not any more
Okay.
so than the other.
Okay.
Jessica,
Yes, ma'am.
sorry, I have a question about number 1 also. Is that price difference the same that was quoted in the original bid?
I believe it is. I have not.
Yes.
Is it? Okay.
Okay, thanks.
So I suggest we just go through each of these 6 items and maybe move to accept them or not, and have further, more granular discussion as necessary, and just vote them in or out. So I'll start with making a motion that we delete the exposed aggregate finish on the patio for a savings of $5,400.
I agree.
I agree. I vote yes.
Yes.
I
Okay.
vote yes.
Yes.
Hey, Britt.
Yes.
Sorry. Hey, hello, everyone. Cliff here. No background at all to these plans. So, of course, I'm kind of throwing darts in the dark here. But with respect to number 1, so obviously deleting the exposed aggregate, are we deciding at this point as to what the alternative will be?
It would be a brushed concrete, which is the finish that you see on a typical sidewalk.
So it would be the same color as a gray sidewalk?
Right. Yeah. Just raw concrete, and you have that slightly brushed texture. So, some people prefer the look of aggregate. Some people don't. I think functionally, we want to make sure that it is slip resistant. And it sounds like either surface achieves that.
Would there be an option of staining it so it might have a different color or look?
I'm sure that is an option.
Yeah, definitely. There are admixtures. You can choose colors, and that's something
Okay.
that we can pose as a
Just from a
question.
purely aesthetic perspective.
Right. Yeah. Which, so choosing something like that, we might end up adding expenses back in.
Yeah.
So I imagine we'll kind of go through some of these decisions again as we go through the project.
Can we take that off the screen? Do we need to leave it on? I guess we need to leave it on until we finish voting. Never mind.
You all tell me.
Jessica, I'm with Cliff on aesthetic questions. Do you know if staining the concrete would add significantly to the cost?
I don't think so. And probably what we would do would not be necessarily a stained concrete, because that is going to be a cost add in finishing. Probably what we would look at is a tinted concrete. That would just be a color, added to the mixture of the concrete. I don't think that adds a significant amount. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Because it would be nice to, go ahead and decide on these things so that we could move forward, sign the contract and let them get started.
Right. And just to sort of remind everyone, part of the purpose of going through these nuts and bolts right now is to get a more pinpoint dollar amount for the contract, because at this point, the builder doesn't have a bond. We don't have a signed contract. There's no notice to proceed. So we're trying to get that dollar sharpened so we can do those things.
It's easier to increase the cost after the fact, but certainly not easier to decrease the cost. So.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I mean, we can, I mean, this is completely up to you all, but just in terms of a procedural element, you know, there, if we were to move forward with the standard room finish concrete and decide then that you wanted to have a color, we can ask for a proposal for that, and we can have a change order issued for the difference of that cost.
All right, so just to wrap up the vote on that item, I'm going to go through and call the roll, if you don't mind, and mark yay or nay. Annette, do you vote to delete or not delete the aggregate? And you're muted.
I'm sorry, I vote to delete.
Okay. Vicky?
I vote to delete.
Judy?
I vote to delete.
Laura?
I vote to delete.
Ed? Ed might be muted. Can't see you.
I unmuted. Can you hear me, Britt?
Yes, I hear you now.
Okay, I vote to delete.
Okay. Sandy?
Delete.
Barbara?
Delete.
Julie?
Delete.
Ronald?
Delete.
And Cliff?
Delete.
All right, looks like that's unanimous. Now I'll go ahead and make okay, so we'll discuss this, Karen. So no offense on this next item, but just to get a motion going, I also move that we delete the steel bench and table at the patio. Is there a second?
A second.
All right, so to discuss that, my thought on that one is that there is no apparent reason to include that in the construction phase of the project. It's something that can easily be installed at any point in time. There's no savings to doing it along with the rest of the project. And so I just thought that that's one area where we can add in some flexibility and have a little bit of wiggle room for some unplanned expenses. And then we can go in and do that. I mean, I agree. It sounds like that is a nice addition. It's functionally nice. I think we're going to want something like that, if not that very item down there. I'm simply suggesting we delete it at this stage because it's just as easy to add it back in later.
Sure, that's fine.
Jessica, can you speak to Karen's thoughts about it being built in and more secure? And can you come along and, I mean, would it be if we did it now?
Sure. So really, there's no, really, as Brett mentioned, this is something that can be added in exactly as currently designed after the fact. It doesn't have to be sequenced in with construction in a special way in order to create a more permanent effect for it. So it can be added after the fact, even exactly as currently designed. The way that we ended up designing it was out of steel that can be welded in. So they cut these pieces and they'll bring them in and weld them and bolt them down to the concrete. So that's something that can be done certainly after the fact.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
So I forget, did we get a second on that?
Second.
Okay, so I'll call the roll again. Annette?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Judy?
Delete.
Laura?
I vote to keep it.
All right. Ed? Can't hear you, Ed.
Sorry again, that I had muted myself. Delete.
All right, Sandy,
Delete.
Barbara,
Delete.
Julie,
Delete.
Ronald,
Delete.
and Cliff.
Delete.
All right, so that one passes. We'll delete that too. I feel sure we'll just add that right back at the end. Just no reason to be strapped to that at this point. The next one, I'm a little uncertain on that. Anybody have a strong feeling one way or the other want to make a motion on the fluid applied air barrier? I'll go ahead and make a motion and we can discuss and maybe get Jessica to help us on that one. But I'm going to move that we also delete the fluid applied air barrier and just use Tyvek. $8,300 sounds like pretty attractive savings for, you know, something. Tyvek is so standard, so commonly used. And just a little foreshadowing, I do think that the foam insulation sounds sensible and we should spend the money there, but I just kind of want to mention that because I think these two items are sort of similar, but that the insulation is an easier decision to make. But so anyway, is there a second on my motion to delete the fluid applied air barrier?
I second.
So can we discuss that? And maybe, I guess, Jessica, can you poke holes in my argument?
No, I can't. And one thing I'll add too is, you know, the primary area where we're heating and cooling is the reading room, right? This is also going to be applied to the elevator shaft as well, but that's not necessarily a permanent condition space. So really what we're talking about is a reading room. And remember, this is 3 walls. And the 4th wall, the reading room, is the existing library wall. And of those 3 walls, 1 is almost completely glass. So that really the area that we're talking about, this change is fairly small in how it impacts thermal performance and such. So I think this is a perfectly reasonable one to accept.
I have a question. So when you say to deduct $8,300, is that including the cost of the Tyvek in there, or do you know how it is? Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, all of these are inclusive of any adjustments that Aaron would have had to make to add that cost back in. Good question.
All right. Anybody else have? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Are there any changes being required to the existing HVAC system, or are there any add-ons as a result of this new space?
I believe we're actually adding new units and ducting into the space. We're adding the new units in the existing, within the existing envelope of the library, and then ducting through the new floor and up.
So the new units are taken into account the 1,000 new square feet.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah, there's no way we opted very, very purposefully to leave the existing units lie as it is. Can of worms and such.
And my last question here, because it relates to 5, and I like what Britt did. You know, to me, 3 and 5 are really can be tied together. The 1,000 square feet that's being added on is going to be open underneath, correct? It's going to be over the patio.
That's correct.
Where I feel like the most important insulation area, and my question would be: is the most important area going to be the floor structure of this add-on as a result of it being open underneath?
That's a very important piece, definitely, because that will that probably impacts comfort in the space more so than anything. Is how the air moves up, and when you have airflow through floor systems, and my house is a great example. We've got part of it's on a slab, and part it's been added onto over the years, and a small portion is on a crawl space that has old bad insulation, which to an earlier point has deteriorated over time. And you can tell on a cold day that air is just moving right on through. So To be very clear, so the fluid applied air barrier is walls.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. The fluid applied
Is
air
on the
barrier is what?
walls.
It's on the
On the
wall.
walls, that's right. So that's not something that would be part of the floor system or the roof system.
And you're saying one wall is glass, so it's only two
That's
walls?
right. It's really primarily just the two walls. I mean, it goes everywhere that there's a wall system because it keeps the moisture from getting into your wall system. But you know, where we have a lot of glass, there's just a very little amount of wall space.
Well, I'm just going to put my thoughts out there, and I would say there are two, number 3 and number 5, both have to do with the structural integrity. And I guess I don't mind, you know, pinching pennies on other things, but when it comes to structural integrity, I mean, you can't go back in and, well, you could, but it cost you a fortune to go back in and tear things out and replace it with new insulation or new fluid applied air barriers. So my inclination is to not delete 3 and 5 because it has to do with the structural integrity. That's just those are just my thoughts.
Can I ask a question, Jessica? How long is the average lifespan of the commercial Tyvek? Is it 10, 20 years?
I would, if I had to guess, I'd say it's probably more like 30 to 50 with the warranty. Sorry for my background noise, y'all. Okay, so it's got a specific 10-year limited warranty on the Tyvek. Probably very similar. I mean, it's not something that you would expect to need to replace anytime soon. Certainly not within a reasonable lifespan of the building. It's something if you were going to re-side it down the road, that would be a consideration.
What is the siding, exterior siding?
It's a hardy panel.
Hardy, okay.
Hardy board and batten, yes.
So could you break down the difference again for us, Jessica? If will it have the same R rating? Is it a matter of not filling in the gaps potentially as well?
That's really what it boils down to. The fluid applied tends to be a much more even coverage, and you don't risk. It's not mechanically fastened. So with Tyvek, you have a mechanical, like a nail or screw fastener, and they're gasketed. They seal those. I mean, that's something that the whole system is designed for. The paper will be lapped and it's taped with the product that comes along with the Tyvek. It really has very similar properties for all intents and purposes to the fluid applied. It's just more a matter of the fluid applied doesn't have necessarily gaps in the laps, the spaces at the windows where somebody used the X-Acto knife and cut it a little bit too far, and things of that nature. It's more generic.
So shall we vote? With regard to the option to delete the fluid applied air barrier, Annette, how do you vote?
She's muted again.
Well, I'm not saying anything either. Muted in more ways than one. Can you go in alphabetical in reverse order?
Something like that. I can skip you anyway. We'll come back. I'll come back to you. Vicky, how do you vote?
I vote to delete.
Judy?
I vote to delete. I liked your discussion about deleting the number 3, but keeping number 5. So I'll delete on 3.
Laura,
Delete.
Ed? Not hearing you yet, Ed.
I vote to delete.
All right. Sandy?
Oh my. I'm mixed too, so I'm not sure. Let me think about it. Come
Okay.
out to me after you go back to Annette.
I'll come back.
Yes.
Barbara?
Don't delete.
Do not delete.
Do not delete.
Julie?
Ooh, I'm torn. I'm feeling peer pressure.
Don't. I mean, if you've got something worth discussing, let's discuss it. I think $8,300 is worth spending for something with significant benefit.
I think this has long-term implications. I vote not to delete.
Okay. Ronald?
I agree with you, Britt, on 3 and 5, so I delete.
Okay. Cliff?
Yeah, I'm fine with deleting 3.
Yeah.
So long as we keep 5, so long as 5 would be kept.
Right. And coming back to Annette?
I vote to delete if Jessica and Craig are very vigilant during the period that the Tyvek's been put down.
Remember, Craig lives like 2 doors down from the library, so we've already told the
Right.
contractor he's going to be there every morning with his coffee.
Perfect.
And Sandy?
Okay, I'll go ahead, delete.
Okay. I do think, that the wall on this particular structure, is a relatively minimal part, relative to other normal structures. And that's a big number. And, most likely all the other town-owned buildings were built with Tyvek. Is my guess. They've been fine. I think we'll be fine. So that one passes. Number 4, change the veneer to maple. Seems like an easy one. I will move to change the veneer to maple. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Sounds like it's easy for everybody. Let's vote. Annette?
Did you hear me?
No.
I think there's a delay. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Annette. Vicky?
I vote to delete and use the maple.
Okay. Judy?
I vote to change the veneer, yes.
Yes. Laura?
Change the veneer. I'm good.
Ed?
Delete. Delete.
Delete?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yeah, change the veneer to maple.
Julie?
Yes to the change.
Ronald?
Yes, change.
Cliff?
Yes, change.
All right, that one passes. Number 5.
I don't think you
move-
called on me that time, Britt.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Sandy.
That's okay. I will vote yes to change it.
Thank you for correcting me.
Mhm.
Number 5, I move that we keep the spray foam insulation.
I second.
Is there discussion there?
I think we pretty well discussed that
I
when we
think
were
so.
discussing 3, so.
Right. Okay, well, let's vote. Annette?
I vote to keep it.
Vicky?
I vote to keep it.
Judy?
I vote to keep it.
Laura?
Keep it.
Ed?
Vote to keep it.
Sandy?
Keep it.
Barbara?
Keep it.
Julie?
Keep it.
Ronald?
Keep it.
Cliff?
Keep it.
Spray foam it is. And with regard to the metal finish, I suggest that we just set that one aside. I don't feel like I can make a decision without seeing a sample of some sort, or I just don't really understand the look of what we're talking about. Anybody want
Well,
to?
I
I'd like to
share
say,
my screen and show you a couple of pictures if it might help.
Okay.
the look that we have right now is kind of bronzy. It's not really black. It's more brown.
Hey, Sam, can you give me co-host capability so I can share my screen?
Sorry, I was muted. If you should be able to share, if you can't, let me know and I'll make you a co-host.
Oh, there it goes.
It was only because I was currently sharing.
Got it. Okay, perfect. So right now what we have is like a black, which is a darker, bronze has a little bit of a range to it. I don't know if you can hear this or see this is the commercial dark bronze. It just has a little bit more of a brown to it versus something like this, which is a little bit darker and more of a black. But that's certainly something we can get samples.
Right now, the front door is dark brown.
Okay.
Definitely dark brown, not black.
Okay.
I like the way the brown looks better than the black.
Yeah, I do too.
And so to clarify, the brown look is $1,700 less expensive than the black look.
That's correct.
Okay. And functionally no difference.
Absolutely correct. So let me, I've got a couple of pictures. So just going to share this one more time. So this is kind of what we were going off of. I mean, this definitely is a little bit more of a black storefront frame. Let's see. I've got pictures of the side. Pictures of the side windows. Yeah, so you're right. The front door is definitely, it looks like the door panels themselves are bronze and perhaps the storefront frame may be the black. So I mean, this is actually a good illustration of the difference.
And I have a question. I wonder if we still need to see a sample, because I would hate for the bronze that we choose would clash with the front door, because that might
You
brown
wouldn't
that clashes. Would it
Yeah,
not?
that is, it's a good point. Yeah, they're not going to be side by side. Where it will be side by side, or perhaps at least in the same field of vision, will be within the reading room, where on the side walls of the new reading room, there we've got the storefront, and then of course that big glass wall has the storefront, and then the wall between the existing library and the new reading room has the existing storefront openings that some of which will remain. So that's really what we want to coordinate with. That's what you'll see in your same field of vision.
That the existing storefront windows that will continue to be there, those are now black?
I mean, it looks to me that they are from the pictures. Again, we can certainly can table this decision and can get some samples.
What if we just voted to match I feel like they should match what exists now. If the only part that's bronze is the front door, I think it makes more sense to match the existing windows. And I don't mean the ones you're going to take out.
Sure, of these 6 windows, only 2 will be taken out.
Okay. Yeah, I would think it would be important to match those, whatever color that turns out to be. And I think it's worth $1,750 to do that.
Can we table this until we see the samples? Is this something that needs to be determined rather quickly?
Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we can do these deducts later on, right? I mean, there's
Yes.
no, okay.
Yeah, we can issue a change order for a deduct just as easily as we can for an add. You know, of course, it's ideal to have it as much done on the front end as possible. But let me reach out to Aaron and just see how quickly he could get some samples over to us, or we may even have some in our office I can look at. But that's something I could drop by now. I need to bring Karen some carpet samples, which I have downstairs. So I will try to get my hands on those samples and bring them by quickly.
So we could go ahead and vote to keep the finish as it is for now, and then maybe next week we see some samples and we'll cover it again. Okay. All right, well, I'll move to keep the finishes as they are, whatever the black is called. Is there a second?
Second.
Annette, how do you vote?
Second.
Sorry, okay, same. All right, Vicky,
Yes.
Judy,
Like to keep it, yes.
Laura,
I'm on the fence on this one. I defer to Miss Glendenning, but if it's something we can change that won't have any impact or delay on construction, I'll hang with the crew and say we keep the way it is.
okay. Ed. Keep. Sandy,
Keep it.
Barbara,
Keep it the way it is.
Julie,
Keep it.
Ronald,
Keep it.
and Cliff.
Keep it.
All right, we'll keep it. And Jessica, I appreciate you making time to join us. Unless anybody has any other questions for Jessica, we'll let her enjoy the rest of her evening.
All right. Well, you all know where to find me, so please don't hesitate to reach out if anything else comes up. Happy to help.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Jessica.
Thanks, Jessica.
Bye. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Karen, would you please do the librarian's report?
Okay, it's going to be, I'm not going to do it all because I'm going to do some of it when we get to the new business, okay?
Sure.
But I will just tell you this, that the Mountain Library Foundation has deposited $500,000 from their coffers to the town's account so that we can get started on the project. And the remainder of the money in our account will be deposited as needed. We pay the town and then the town pays the project's bills. So that's the way it works. As soon as the contractor has, and we've finalized these value engineering details, that means the contract will be finalized and then the town will give him formal notice to proceed. And then he said he could get started about 10 days after he receives the notice. So this is what we want to do. We want to just get it done, is to get started. For lots of reasons, but mainly because we're just so excited to get it done. But we would like to hold a groundbreaking ceremony sometime. And it's really not going to be much of a ceremony. It's mainly going to be a photo op. That's what it's going to be, so that we can put it on our webpage and we can put it on, send it out and put it in the newspaper. And I will let you know whatever day suits the contractor and the architects. And then y'all can, anybody that would like to can come. I hope you can all come. We'll probably just do this in the backyard. And I think Aaron said that he could bring some shovels, so we could just, have a photo. That's what it really amounts to. One of the reasons we're so excited to get started on this is that we know that it's going to, some of the messy and loud part of the work is going to be rather disturbing to the library. So right now, since we're not fully open, this would be a great time to get that kind of thing done. I think that's really all I'm going to say. I have some other things to say, but that they're kind of they're in the other subjects that we're going to talk about in the new and the old business. Okay, Brett.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any old business? New business?
these two things that we were going to talk about.
Okay, sure. Yeah, the mission and the vision statements.
The mission and vision statements, and then the reopening. Okay. Did everybody get the email I sent to them with the mission
Yes.
and vision statements?
Yes.
Okay, I think then y'all need to talk about it and see whether you like that or you add it and change it, or, you know, we're open to anything.
I think it's much better. I like the addition that it was made to it. I think it tells more about what our library really is.
I'm a big fan of the vision statement, but I think we could improve the mission statement.
All right, so what would y'all like to do?
Not to step on any toes, but I thought it could have a little bit more representative of what the library actually does day to day. It's somewhat nebulous, I
Well,
think, at this
true.
point.
It is nebulous. I think that's kind of purposeful, but yeah.
Well, I did some research and I looked at like the British Library and the New York Public Library's mission statements, and they were a little bit more kind of clear cut as far as exactly what services the libraries provide. So instead of being kind of esoteric, it's a little bit more practical in the sense I've saved a couple of them if y'all are interested.
Yeah.
Sure.
The New York Public Library's mission is to inspire lifelong learning, advance knowledge, and strengthen our communities. The British Library's mission is to make our intellectual heritage accessible to everyone for research, inspiration, and enjoyment. So it's a little bit more concrete, I think, than what we have currently.
Okay. I liked both of those, but I felt like the New York Library might be a little bit more like, not quite so.
I drafted one if y'all were interested.
Yes, apparently, please.
I just wrote and this is nothing that we need to consider, but it was something that I thought might be helpful just as a framework. The Signal Mountain Library's mission is to provide our residents and patrons with a diverse selection of multimedia resources, as well as enriching programs for inspiration, enjoyment, and enlightenment.
I love that, but that maybe we'll have to change the vision statement then, because we don't want to say we want them to be different. You know?
Yeah. That's what I didn't want to duplicate it, but you already do that now as far as, you know, the mission statement should reflect kind of the daily activities that y'all are already doing, where the vision statement kind of casts the vision for the future. So,
okay.
We could, you know, again, it's nothing but just fodder for food for thought.
No, I thought it was great. I loved what you said.
I like that, Laura. I think the mission statement tells what you do and who you serve. And then the vision statement, like you said, is forward looking as to, okay, how do we want to go forward? So I like your mission statement.
Well, we don't have to use it for sure, but I thought the mission statement, it needed to be a little bit refined, kind of fine-tuned a little bit.
Okay, I think that's great. I'm all for that. But then we're going to have to do something about the vision, because it doesn't.
I do like the vision statement though.
But it says the same
Maybe
thing.
that was my inspiration, I think.
How about Berkeley's library says their mission is to provide materials and services to help residents obtain information for their personal education and cultural needs. So it's like, what do? We provide materials and services.
Mm-hmm.
And then who do we serve? The residents. Something, I mean, we're very similar. We're just using a bunch of different words that I think we're all on the same page, or at least Laura, you and I are on the same page.
And I don't want to delay this. And I know the website is waiting for these statements. I know she's ready to plug those in. So I definitely don't want to, again, be a cause for delay or anything. But I did think that the mission statement could be tweaked a little.
Okay, well, why don't you all send me those things and then I will send them back out. I'll put them together and send them back out. Would that work?
Sure.
That works for me.
Laura, I like what you wrote. Did you see the vision statements of either of these libraries you looked up?
Sorry. Yes, they do have vision statements that they forecasted some specific programs that they were working on. And they incorporated that into their vision statements. And some of them were quite long. I mean, like not a page, because the website doesn't really have a page, but they were quite more detailed and involved. I thought our vision statement was fine. I think it's good. And again, it may be duplicating the thought with the mission statement and vision statement. Oftentimes those two kind of do overlap. But yeah, they did have the vision statements as well, but usually way longer and much more detailed.
Yeah. I mean, I think to your point, these are things that boards generally and staff kind of come together. They do a strategic plan and they sit around for hours and get really tired and can't think by the end of the day. But generally that's, I think, how some of this stuff is worked out, especially a vision statement. What is our vision for the library moving forward? We had our strategic plan. The last one was, I don't know, Karen, 5 or 6 years ago. And that's when the vision of the reading room came to be, with a fireplace, and here it is happening. So, I mean,
can we see that? Can we have access to that? That would be very helpful.
To what? I mean, it happened in person and it wasn't recorded. I'm sure there are notes on it somewhere.
Well,
but
what your vision was? What is the vision?
Sorry.
We haven't actually ever we've had a mission statement, but we haven't had a formal vision statement. We've just talked about future plans, but we haven't had a formal quote vision statement.
I've had experience with several organizations going through a protocol that allows a group of people to develop a mission or vision statement. And I would be happy to take everybody through that protocol if you're interested. It usually takes a little over an hour. So I don't know if y'all are interested, but I would be happy to lead the team in that if you would like.
Karen, is the website developer waiting for to fill a particular notch in the library's website with this information, or can it be something that's like, under construction, we'll get back to you type of thing?
I mean, obviously she will wait for us. She was wanting it because she was working on she wants it to be kind of front and center, but that's okay. I think we can talk her into waiting. She's been so nice, to do this free.
Well, it's hard to write a vision statement without knowing what the vision is for our library. And I don't know what your vision is.
I would be interested in Vicki leading us through that process.
Me too. I think so too. I think it's a great idea, Vicki.
Sounds valuable, right?
Yeah.
Well, could we temporarily put something in that spot so we can just get the kind of, refined website going instead of waiting for, us all to get
she's
together?
waiting for it. I think she knows that I think she'll hold the place, but I know she wants to get it done. So I think the sooner we could do it, the better off we'd be. I don't want to drag it out since we're not even.
We just have to schedule a work session. You guys can tell me when, and I can get the materials together. I can email it to you all so you have it before in the agenda. And I've never done it on Zoom, but it could be like really fun.
Okay.
Well, Karen, can
Yes.
go ahead and do the, website with what we've got here and simply change it? I mean,
Oh, true. We could do that.
Without publishing it, you mean?
Yeah.
Not, you wouldn't want to publish it with the current, what we have currently for the mission statement.
But she could go ahead.
She could go ahead drafting it, couldn't she? But without publishing, without actually putting the website up there.
Yeah. I mean, this web, I mean, they're not, y'all are going to get to approve of this website anyway. So
Yeah.
it's not like it's ready to go.
It's very easy to change something like that. So
Yeah. I think we can tell her just save the place, you know. I don't think we have to give her anything to hold it. I mean, I think we'll just tell her we're not quite ready.
I've seen people put like for mission and vision, have the place on the website and put in development.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
people know it's there, but they know that it's being worked on so that they do have the capacity to not say that it's changed. Because I hear what you're saying when you're saying, should we put it on there now? So I've seen that done.
Okay. I can talk to her about that.
Okay, so we'll come back to that. And Vicki, I appreciate you offering to lead us in a workshop. Sounds valuable. The other item we were going to bring up for new business is we would like to start discussing the process of planning to reopen. So we'd like to sort of just talk about how we'll know when it's okay to reopen and in what capacity, and just sort of start putting a plan together. And I suggested, just because the only such organization that I'm aware of that has really shown us objective data about how they planned it is Hamilton County Schools. You know, they long ago established 4 phases of addressing education during the pandemic, and they established these concrete thresholds based on active cases in Hamilton County. And once the number of active cases drops below an exact number, they pass into the next phase and so on. And so seems like a reasonable sort of framework for us to follow in considering how we're going to reopen and when we're going to reopen and how do we know it's okay to reopen and that sort of thing. So I'm just suggesting that we have a brief discussion about how that looks, and we'll, come back and we'll have follow-up discussions. But if anybody has any specific ideas about how to decide when to open, looking at numbers like active cases or hospitalizations or, whatever you think is relevant, and starting to put that together, it would be a valuable process.
Can I tell you what I've found? Okay, it's going to take them. I'll be quickly as fast as I can. There's several different strategies to consider. We feel like the people that were working at the library do. First of all, our goal is to balance the interests of safety first for our staff and then for our patrons. And we know that if one of us staff members gets the virus, the whole library will have to close during the quarantine of the staff, and that means nobody will get any services. We're still quarantining all items for 72 hours before we handle them and allow them to be checked out again. And we have a system to do this. It does take extra time, but we're happy to do that. We have relied on the advice of the American Library Association and the Tennessee Library Association for our practices. Libraries really are a little different than schools. Most of the libraries here in Tennessee and throughout the country are doing what we are doing, providing books to our patrons via curbside service. Patrons can reserve books online or by phone, and if they don't know what they want, we'll help them by suggesting titles. Not only does this help them, it's also helped us to really know what particular people really like. We've created special grab bags for elementary age children and storytime sets for preschoolers. And as of the end of February, we'd handed out 893 of these bags to parents. Not only do we put 5 books in each one of them, so we also put some crafts and little coloring pages and treats. And they're very popular, and many moms come every week. So we have to really keep up with what they've checked out previously, so we won't give them the same thing again. We've stayed up to date with what's being published and have continued to buy new books, so that's not an issue. We've increased our number of ebooks during this time also, since patrons have asked for this, and we still check out movies and books on CD, but it seems that most of our patrons have access to streaming services for films. And since people are not traveling as much, our audiobooks are not in as big demand. We've also added a feature that shows color images of all the book jackets in our catalog listings. This is something that we paid a little bit of money for, but we felt like it was really helpful to people because people really like to see what the front of the book looks like. And now you can just pull up on OPAC our catalog, and you can see a cover image, as well as the synopsis of the plot, which is also on there. We are lucky that we haven't had patrons who need to use our computers. We haven't had to tell anybody that nobody is sick. Can we come use your computers? I mean, then this is a year, almost that they haven't said that. That's just because we live on Signal Mountain, and everybody here has computers or has access to the internet. We do provide copying and scanning and faxing services. But we just do that while the patrons wait outside. They just come and hand it to us or put it through the book drop, and we fix it for them. We've also been distributing the tax forms to anybody that asks for them. And you can see from the monthly reports that we continue to add new members every week, which is really interesting to us because, usually we add new members once, it's not all year long, every month. And this time it's just every week we're adding new members. I know that there are no more houses for sale on Signal Mountain, or not many. So I don't know how long that's going to work, but we know that when we do let the patrons in the library again, we'll have to follow these strict guidelines. And these are the guidelines that the American Library Association puts forth. And I just checked them last week, so I know that this is current. First, I really feel like, and this is something that they recommend, is that, maybe you could wait till all your employees have vaccines. Now, some of these libraries are huge libraries. And so, they have 100, 200 employees, and, we really only have 5. And so, and I'm really the only one that's actually had both shots. Kathy's had one and we're getting the other one, and Lisa signed up, but I don't think John and Laura have had. I know they haven't had any. We would have to, if we open to the public, we'd have to have everybody to wear a mask, and we could only let a certain number in at a time, as it is right now, only for a specified length of time, and have physical distancing requirements. The real problem with this is that this requires enforcing, and that's not something that we really love the thought of doing. We'll have to also devise a system for computers use, and one of the things that these library associations have recommended is to buy some sort of screens for the plastic screens that go on the keyboards. And then after somebody leaves a computer, the guards will have to be disinfected. So, and the same thing goes through for bathrooms. And, they say you have to disinfect the bathrooms after every use. And that's something that, we are not doing right now. We don't have dirty bathrooms, but we don't have, since there's just the 5 of us in there, it hasn't been an issue. The book nook might not be able to be open immediately because we'd have to deal with making change and that kind of thing. And one of the other big issues that we face is the lack of our volunteers. We usually have about 18 volunteers every week, but we don't think anybody's going to really want to come volunteer right now. And it's going to be difficult for us to operate without them. I know these things may not have to be addressed if we remain in our current phase of curbside pickup, but we don't want to stay in this forever. We would really, really want to be open, but we want to realize we want it to be safe. It's the kind of thing you cannot say. We don't feel like we could say to people, you may come in and browse, but you can't touch anything. And, you can't say that. And then if they do, how do you take care of that? Or how do you disinfect it? You can't really disinfect a book very well. I realize that people think that hard surfaces are not as capable of infecting other people with this disease, but the American Library Association still has strict guidelines for things that need to be quarantined and disinfected. So I feel like I don't feel like they're being foolish about it. So we've tried to be reasonable about it. And I don't want anybody to think that we don't want to open, because we really do want to open, but we just want it to be safe for everyone. And we hate the thought of having to be policemen. Okay.
A couple of suggestions on that I've seen. One thing that could be helpful is when we have kids in our library, we only have them in for like a 50-minute section of time. And so you can almost schedule the time where for 50 minutes, like if you come at 8 o'clock, then you have to be gone by 8:50, so that between 8:50 and 9 o'clock, people can go through and spray the commodes or whatever. And then also in our library, we have a bunch of the plastic restaurant gloves, not the expensive ones, but all the kids grab a pair of gloves when it's their time to actually check out a book. So that's another option, is to require patrons to wear, to take some gloves. I don't know how many people would be coming in or how expensive it would be, but that's an option that would maybe take some of the stress out of having folks in there.
We have thought about the gloves.
Karen, you thought about it, and what'd you decide?
We
What'd you
decided
think
that
about it?
it just depends on how many people we have to let in at once. If we decide to let in, we thought we would probably do something like 10 or 15 people would be the most we would let in at a time, because there's no way to separate that many people in the library, because you can't say you can go over here in the children's section when they don't really want it. Everybody wants to go to, new fiction or whatever. And so it's just it's a matter of, the 6 feet apart thing is kind of hard to control. We think it might be, maybe not.
I personally think it's important to start testing, some of these methods, maybe with an extremely limited number of people. Maybe you start with one person in the library and that helps raise awareness of how people, deal with the current situation, and maybe that, lets you know that it's okay to increase that to 3, or maybe we go to 5 and we decide we should have done 4. Or, maybe we just start putting things into place.
Perhaps if we're talking about testing it, we might have board members do that. Rather than open to the public and say, okay, we're going to start opening this and we're going to see how it plays. If you're thinking about bringing in 1 or 2 people, bring in some of the board members. I'm sure some of us have already been vaccinated, which would be some help. So maybe those of us who've been vaccinated can volunteer to work with Karen and see how some of these play.
Karen, were you talking about people setting appointments to come in, or just kind of, show up and then you would?
I don't know. You might have to wait. We wouldn't want people to have to wait, especially if the weather was terrible. But if we had a limit of how many people could come in, I guess we could have.
Could you do that online, like make 10 slots and people at a certain time could sign up for a slot to come in, or?
We could do that.
That would, to me, would be almost ideal, one for the staff and for patrons. Instead of having to show up in the parking lot and realize I can't go in because they've maxed out. I have to sit around for 30 minutes and wait for someone to leave. But if you have a sign up, and Karen, you could say, 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon, you don't even, whether you choose to limit that time, those time slots, and say 5 people for 20 minutes or however you want to segregate it. But someone logs in and reserves their time slot. So they show up, they run in, they do what they need to do and leave.
And maybe initially we just don't make the computers available, and we take that piece out of the mix. And is it practical or legal for us to not make the bathrooms available to the patrons?
Well, I have a question about the bathrooms, because I know in the clinics I work with, I mean, nobody is disinfecting bathrooms after somebody goes in there.
Yeah.
And there's no recommendation to do that. So it's interesting that
That's what they said.
I know that's an extra thing that I just haven't seen that anywhere. And I think you would run into an issue if you close the bathrooms completely. I mean, it's
especially if people are bringing children in.
yes. So
that's a whole nother issue too with children.
yes.
Well, I would
Limit
think,
it to people who've been vaccinated. I mean, as much as you hate to do something like that, but I mean, I imagine the patrons who will want to go to the library are going to be at both ends of the spectrum. Are going to be those who are of the age, likely been vaccinated or have had the option to be vaccinated, and then you've got the kids.
Well, Karen, I think that what you have been doing for the children is absolutely wonderful. And I know it's a lot of work for you and the staff, but I expect that the children and their families really do appreciate what you're doing.
I think they do. I think they really like it. In fact, some mothers have said this is so much easier than having to get out of the car and bring them all inside. So,
Well, I was going to say, why couldn't you kind of do a dual approach and keep the curbside available? And for those that really want to come inside, can come inside, and those who prefer to have the curbside service, so you would have both available. There'll be a certain level of discomfort with some people.
Well, the only issue with that is just having enough people to do it. I mean, we may have 5 people, but they don't all work at the same time. Right. So we don't, lots of times we just have 2 or 3 people there, and that could be kind of difficult. But
severely restricting the volume of patrons would sort of help throttle that, demand.
Yeah.
Karen, could you send out a notice to those who used to volunteer and ask if any of them are willing to volunteer?
Yeah.
And maybe set some times where they could help out.
I'll volunteer too.
There you got one.
Karen, on that note, with respect to volunteering, for example, what you've been doing for the kids, putting these bags together, is that something that can be that volunteers could do?
Well, probably they could put them in the bag, but they couldn't take them out. I mean, the trouble is what you have to do is say X person requests 5 books for their son. We have to go back and look at their account and see what books he's already had out so that we can get 5. That's not an easy thing and that's easier for us to do because we've been doing it. I think a volunteer could do that, but it wouldn't be quick. Lisa's got a great system, but it is time consuming. He's really worked on the system for the kids, and it's really works. It really does work.
So does the number of active cases resonate with you at all, Karen? I mean, is there some point where you become comfortable?
I don't know about that. Whether I'm comfortable or not, it's not really. I'm not sure the active cases in Hamilton County is really relevant to Signal Mountain. I think we are really different, and I don't know whether we can. I don't think we can get a breakdown geographically.
I don't think so.
I don't think that's even available.
But would you estimate that the number of active cases percentage-wise on Signal Mountain is higher or lower than the number of active cases percentage-wise in the county?
No, I think it'd definitely be lower.
I think there are some websites that have more specific areas of how many. I remember seeing.
I've
like,
seen some,
Hamilton
but
County broken up. But I just don't know how easy it would be to keep getting that information. I have Hamilton County schools have stopped doing the phase tracker at this point, but I have a picture of it. So I don't know if you guys would be interested in looking at it. I can share my screen if you haven't seen it. If it matters, I don't know if you want to.
I've seen it, but it didn't, the Signal Mountain was not by itself. You know, it
Right,
was-
not in this. I think there's ways to get that information to see based on, I know it's on percentages of our population of Hamilton County. So if a certain percentage of people in Hamilton County are positive, that takes you to the phase that it matches.
Mhm.
Karen, I've got a question. What are your staff's concerns?
My staff is, well, there are a lot of concerns. I think both Laura and Lisa are concerned because Lisa's husband is immunocompromised right now, and Laura lives with her invalid mother. And so they're concerned about them.
Okay.
Would they, are they, well, it's really none of my business whether they're planning on becoming vaccinated, but
Oh, I think everybody that works there is planning on being vaccinated when they're allowed to be.
I mean, if I were working there, I would want to be fully vaccinated before we did even a test run of it.
I think they feel that way too.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I think what we're looking at May for really availability of vaccines for most of your staff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had always thought that, we were probably looking at opening back up, in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
That was my assumption.
Well, that's kind of what we were thinking too, but we were hoping that, and we were really thinking that we probably were not going to be able to have the summer reading program because that is a very crowded, close thing. But we would try to do some sort of programs where we would, and also another reason that would not work is because we'd have the construction going on. But we try to do some sort of programs where we could do something outside. Even if we had to go to the playground to do it,
Well, I think, concern I've got is, just for the staff in terms of their comfort level and to make sure that they feel good about, whatever plan is developed, because, it's falling on them to carry it out.
Mm-hmm.
And they will be exposing themselves.
Yes, I mean, so.
I think also, as Karen mentioned, the volunteers, she's going to have to be able to bring some of those in, even if she does limited number of people, patrons coming in, she's going to need more help than the library, just the library staff themselves.
Well, it sounds like the community is still taking advantage of the services. So I don't think there's been a decline. It doesn't sound like too terribly much in meeting the desires of your patrons. And I'm one of the fussiest. And I'm busting to get back in there. But at this point, if everything's still meeting a certain threshold and everybody's happy as far as patrons go, why rush it, I guess, is what I'm saying. However, I think the sooner we could get into construction too, if you could do that in tandem, at some point, if we keep the patrons away and get the bulk of the construction done would be ideal.
Yeah, it would. That's why I wish we could have started earlier.
Right.
But I'm feeling very optimistic about it now. I think we're going to get started soon.
Well, so I agree. The services have been outstanding throughout the pandemic and continue to be. And I do feel like the majority of the people who are seeking services from the library are being served well and getting everything they need. There are always a few outspoken people on both ends of the spectrum. And, I've
Got to go
had
to
it communicated.
Sorry.
Sure.
Keep on.
I've had it communicated to me, especially during our capital fundraiser. Well, when's the library going to open? Why is everything else opening and the library is still sitting there? And so, you hear these murmurings, and it's hard to quantify, the number of people that feel like it should be open versus are happy continuing as it is. And but subjectively, I have to agree that many things are picking up momentum and figuring out a way to, resume operations. And certainly
I
seems
feel
like,
that too. I think you're absolutely right. And we really are looking all the time to try to find some great idea that somebody
Mhm.
has that we can implement, but we just haven't found anything yet. Other than what I mentioned.
I think the fact that we are looking for a plan, and if we could come up with what
Mhm.
looks like our plan,
Mhm.
and we could publish that,
I agree.
then people would know
Yes.
what to look for and know even
Yes.
though we're not doing it right away, we're working on it, we're not forgetting about it.
Yes, that seems to be what I'm hearing from the community is they're just curious why, or it seems like the library is idle and not doing anything to plan to open. And if we published a plan, I think it would answer the question, even if that plan is to open in July or whatever it may be. But it sounds like, Karen, maybe a good place to start is by touching base with a few prospective volunteers, especially some that have already been vaccinated, and also talking to the staff and just asking them about what they might think is a reasonable plan.
Okay, I will. And we talk about that all the time. So we can do that. We can work on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think offering a timeline would, assuage some people's concerns. Like, we're looking at summer of, 2021 to
Right.
phase in a full kind of,
Mm-hmm.
plan type of thing.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
And
helped us too.
Yeah, and plans may change, I mean, we see resurgences and whatever. So, but just putting something out there might be productive.
I
Right.
think so.
And I would include that caveat in the plan.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Include language saying this is subject to change
Of course.
according to the.
Mhm.
One other thing I want to just mention before we adjourn, to the new members, we do have some committees, as you might have expected. In the past, when we've had a smaller board, these typically are one-person committees. But I imagine that we would be able to team up and have a couple people on committees going forward, and maybe we even develop some new committees, but just wanted to float those out there so you can be thinking about which ones you might be interested in participating on. The committees we currently have are Policy and Development, Systems and Facilities, and Schools and Community Relations. So food for thought next time. Speaking of, we haven't covered committee reports. I'll just ask if anyone has a committee report to offer. And hearing none, our next meeting is April the 19th. And